sucks!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast. Marine Corps League and Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. Now streaming on all major podcast platforms. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're going to have a part 6 with Mike Fallon as he gives us some incredible insight to his career and what was happening around when he was going through. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out, see what we're all about. You can also help support us by becoming a patron. That's a monthly donation, or you can just go in and purchase you some cool merchandise, and that helps get our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project. Make sure you're going and checking them out. See what they're all about. Go and purchase some of their merchandise and help them in their mission as well. You can go see them at tillvalhallaproject.com. Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps Veteran Service Organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member. All right, we're back. We got Mike here. How you doing, Mike?
Having a good day. Thanks, AJ.
Very nice. Well, we always got to put a little plug in there for Heal 119, your book that's going to be coming out in August. So, we just got to put that plug in there every time. We got to get lots of sales on this thing.
I appreciate that very much. And it's, of course, available now for advanced sales at Casemate website or at Amazon's website. So thanks for the plug. Looking forward to getting started today.
Awesome. Well, I think where we left off, you were support battalion there on the depot in San Diego, and you were getting ready to transfer from there.
Yes, sir. I actually had the great benefit of having 2 full years there, and then I fleeted up to become the XO of the regiment. But before we leave support battalion, the message from our last session was that both recruiters and drill instructors impact attrition at MCRD. And attrition is a bad thing because it's a waste of resources. It's a good thing if the person that attrits is not supposed to be a Marine. And so it's a two-edged sword.
Right.
Recruiters can impact their own personal attrition rate with the young candidates, young recruits in their delayed entry program, the DEP, by meeting with them and teaching them Marine Corps history. But even more important, if that recruiter can get the young man to do 3 dead hang pull-ups before he ships to MCRD San Diego, his chances of graduation are 73% better. Because three pull-ups are the minimum standard to pass the Marine Corps PFT.
Right.
But what that also does is it's a good gauge of body weight to strength. And so when you're got recruits, high school juniors and seniors in your delayed entry program recruiters, put them on the pull-up bar, have them do honest pull-ups. And if they can't do 3, get them on a program to do pyramid pull-ups, lose 10 pounds, and maybe don't ship them, hold them back and work with them.
Yeah.
Likewise, when a recruit becomes the responsibility of a drill instructor, he can help attrition by knowing the difference between an honest mistake where the recruit trips over his shoelaces versus he doesn't know how to tie his boots.
Right.
And those type Marines, AJ, you are a drill instructor. The
Yeah.
kids that jump out at you, they jump out and they scream at you that this kid shouldn't be a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, through the normal attrition of physical fitness and drill, we learn that fella doesn't go. Okay, enough
Mm-hmm.
of that. Before I left support battalion, it was really about 9 months before I left, I had actually recontacted an old recon Marine who had been the ops chief of 1st Recon Battalion and in some months a first sergeant in one of the letter companies. His name was Rene Rigalot,
Mm-hmm.
and he retired as a master sergeant, actually was on the master gunnery sergeant's list, and had to make a decision of getting sent to Cherry Point as a recon Marine or retiring, where city of San Diego offered him to be the director of beaches for the
Oh
10
wow.
city of San Diego beaches. And of course, he was a recon Marine and a water guy, and he had his family in San Diego, and we weren't at war, and he retired here. So later, we're talking 20 years later, he's still the big dog of San Diego beaches,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm at MCRD San Diego. He started what is known as the West Coast IBS races,
Okay.
inflatable boats, small. And so IBSs are what Recon uses, what UDT uses, what SEAL uses
Right.
to come from a ship or a boat, usually at night, in a small inflated rubber boat with usually a coxswain, sometimes an engine that's quiet. In the
Mm-hmm.
old weren't quiet engines, and usually 6 Marines, 3 on each side of each of the gunnels, paddling, coming into the surf zone when you have to come in clandestinely. But once a year it was a sport, and
Mm-hmm.
you could enter. So I went down to the physical training division where all the stud drill instructors were.
Right.
That included the swim tank, and I think you had some time in the tank. And I said, "Hey, drill instructors, we got this inflatable boat small race coming up in 3 months, and it's going to have recon. It's going to have the instructors from the amphibious school over at Coronado. Those were
Mm-hmm.
Marine instructors, amphib recon school. It'll have a SEAL team from the Coronado will be there. They'll probably have 2 or 3 boats entered." I said, "We should enter an IBS." And they all said, "Oh, wait a minute. How can we keep up with these guys?" And I said, "Well, they'll just come out like it's a t-shirt race for a 5K marathon.
Yeah.
If we practice, if we go to the beach once a week and call it our workout, um, we can practice and we can put together a team." So it was it was no arm twisting. It was volunteers. We put together a team. We practice once a week, midday,
Mm-hmm.
usually, just during the week. Didn't get into family time on the weekend. South Mission Beach, San Diego. So pristine Mission Beach is pristine beach.
Right.
Mission Beach on a good day has got 2 to 3 foot breakers. It's a good surf beach, and we'd practice for an hour or so. So the contest is you have to be all the way back at the boardwalk, which is like 250 meters away from the surf.
Right.
You you go to the carry position, whichever carry position the team wants. Everybody's lined up with a foot on the boardwalk. They shoot the pistol. You carry the IBS to the water. You get through the surf zone. They have a big red buoy out at 500 meters. Everybody is sprinting for the same buoy, around the buoy, back to the shore. Flip your boat and drain all the water. High carry back to the boardwalk wins it.
Right.
So I got to tell you, we put together a team, 2 officers. I was coxswain because I was old and I knew about the boat, and I know I didn't have the arm strength that the other people we could get.
Right.
And so we put together the drill instructors, and I just got to tell you, I'm going to look down here. I was a Cox. The number 5 man was Sergeant Bruce Denton, and he was from PTD, and he did mainly 3-mile run demonstrations and modifications. Sergeant Ali Balina was the number 4 position. Number 6, which is right back by the Cox and keeps them out of trouble, it is supposed to be your strongest man with a paddle. Gunnery Sergeant, future Sergeant Major Jim Talley. And
Okay.
Talley was a bench lifter with a V body. He's also went from PTD over to the academic unit for a while. Ended up Sergeant Major of Quantico, retired, and ended up Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, where he then did 30 years at the Warfighting Lab as a government civilian. Anyway, Jim Talley, really a great. Number 2 was Staff Sergeant Lorenzo Middlebrook, a dark green Marine that was just awesome in the boat. Number 3, Staff Sergeant Jerry Hernandez. Up on stroke, I had my executive officer, who was a fish in his own self, brand new Lieutenant Colonel Steve Cheney. He went on to become a general officer, but he was a triathlete, PT stud. So we put him up on stroke.
Nice.
So the day comes, SEAL team's got 3 boats in. Amphib Recon's got the instructor's boat. 1st Recon Battalion down from Petaluma with a boat. 1st Force Recon's got a boat. And they're giving us verbal shit. Support Battalion, Recruit Training Regiment. Oh, you are the guys that hand out socks and jocks.
Yeah.
We just smiled. I just told everybody, don't say nothing. We'll let our performance speak.
Right.
I got to tell you, because we practice, we didn't make any mistakes. I had told them at the beginning, our strategy was we're going to go slow and save our strength to get in the water. We would power through the surf zone, and then we'd pick up the rhythm. And by where they were, we would do counts. And we went around the buoy in first. We came in first, going away, and all the drilling. And of course, afterwards, it's done on a Saturday midday. Afterwards, there's a beer bust right there at Mission Beach.
Yeah.
A lot of heavy special operators drinking a beer and admitting that they had not practiced. So I had to give credit to the Physical Training Division, the swim tank of Support Battalion, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, 1997 West Coast IBS champs.
I love it.
Yeah, really good. So I got to take a couple of weeks off, and then I fleeted up to become the executive officer of the Recruit Training Regiment. It's kind of nice being in the regiment for 2 years. So the XO is the bad cop for the CO good cop, and
Yeah.
the CO Recruit Training Regiment, it's just it's a high pressure job, but it's also a pleasure to be there. When I had Support Battalion, the CO was a colonel by the name of Ken Jordan, and what an all-star. And you know, he was another recon Marine. He was a 3rd Force Recon guy in Vietnam. Did just a superior job in manpower back in headquarters Marine Corps, and understood that it was their job to make Marines, not get rid of Marines. He left, and his replacement was the guy I really wanted to talk about, a colonel by the name of Richard. We called him Dick. Well, we called him Colonel. Dick Davis, 6'4", 6'4", former. He's a Mustanger. He didn't become an officer till after he'd been a gunnery sergeant for a few years.
Wow.
And what a great story. He had a tour at 8th and I, corporal through staff sergeant. All his promotions as a enlisted Marine were meritorious, of course. And his last 2 years at 8th and I, He was the color sergeant of the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
And he was a buck sergeant, color
Yeah.
sergeant of the Marine Corps. He was a 6'4". He looked the part.
Yep.
He knew the part. And of course, he slept with the Marine Corps colors there in the barracks at 8th and I, and always had them pressed out for Friday night parade during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And so his story was such that the DIs would always say, well, look down there at the colonel who's watching drill, who's taller than all of us. And, oh, the other character we had. I'm not going to tell you about the admin work that the XO has to do. My relief every day, my pleasure every day was to go out and run at noontime.
Mm-hmm.
My noontime running partner was the regimental sergeant major.
Okay.
And he came to work at 4 o'clock in the morning and went to the mess hall and drank coffee, sat on the side, and he was spiffy, wearing his hat. And then when breakfast was over, he'd come back and work in the office, until about 5:30 or 6, and then he'd put on his PT gear, and he would PT with a different series and a different battalion every day in the morning,
Yeah.
all morning.
Wow.
If there's anybody PTing, he would just go along and jump on. And we had colored shirts, as you know, there at the
Mm-hmm.
depot.
Right.
Support, and he was in support battalion, so his shirt was green, and of course across the back, on his shoulders in big letters was RTR space SGT period MAJ period Sergeant Major Overstreet.
Yeah.
And
Very nice.
Overstreet could run the PFT. He could run the 3 miles in 17:30 as the regimental sergeant major.
Wow.
And he would go by blistering. And so he and I would, his run at noon with me was his cool off run when he cooled off.
Yeah.
And we would go and go for usually 5 miles, not PT course. We'd go at a talking pace. Talking pace for Overstreet was 7 miles a minute. We'd take a 5-miler, but we would compare notes.
Yeah.
And I would give him things that I didn't want to deal with, and I knew the old man didn't want to deal with, and just say, Sergeant Major, would you just take a look at this? I heard that the laundry machines, the dryers and washers down at DI school were all broken, and I don't know what's going on down there at DI school. It's not my, one thing you learn as an officer, you're not really wanted around DI school.
Yeah.
DI school is where DIs become DIs or not. They don't make it.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty cool place. So, and then he would give me things that he thought were officer's business. He would say, I want you to look at this series, which meant that he thought that maybe there was something I ought to see in that series. And what that would cause is he knew that I was a data dink. We would go back and I just asked the 3 shop to run the numbers. We talk about on our last series attrition numbers, and are they high for medical reasons or high for academic reasons, or high because they were just a lot of guys quitting. So anyway, Overstreet, a legend amongst sergeant majors, of course, went on to become the sergeant major of the Marine Corps. I cannot tell you what number he is because the sergeant majors of the Marine Corps started after the commandants.
Mm-hmm.
So we had less sergeant majors than we got commandants, but they all know what number they are. I still see him around the retired Marine Corps circuit. He lives down in Texas.
Yeah.
When I go to San Antonio, I always make it a point we get together and at the Menger Hotel. The Menger Hotel is across the street from the Alamo in San Antonio. It's an old colonial hotel with a courtyard built when the Alamo was built. It's
Right.
got a sidebar that you can enter from the alley. Mahogany, floor to ceiling, classic bar with nice booths. You can't see in there; it's so dark. And that's where Theodore Roosevelt, when he resigned as
Uh-huh.
the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, the civilian job in Washington,
Right.
he resigned against the Secretary of the Navy and the President's desires and went down to San Antonio and raised a regiment that became the Rough Riders that went to Cuba and took San Juan Hill. And his recruiting station was the bar at the Menger Hotel, took a lesson from the Marines with Tun Tavern in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So the Rough Riders and their horses went by train from San Antonio to Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were going to take it a steamliner from Tampa to down by where Gitmo is today, but there was not room for the horses. So the Rough Riders gave up their horses, and he actually bumped 5 other regiments and worked a fast deal, got the Rough Riders on this tanker one night and got them sailing. So when they got there, of course, they were untrained and they weren't regulars. And so the regular army looked at them with a jaundiced eye, but they got a mission. And thanks to his leadership and some others, Dan Daly was there somehow for that, doing signals on the hill. Anyway, I can't talk about pushing paper as an XO of a regiment, so I had to talk about people. Sergeant Major Gene Overstreet. So
Yeah.
you got any Overstreet stories you want to put
I
on the
don't.
file here and go
Yeah,
on
I don't have any
public
Overstreet.
record?
Yeah, I don't have any Overstreet stories. I think I've met him once, in a sense of I said hi and shook his hand. That was it, though. I don't really know any other stories. I got nothing.
Well, I got to tell you, he was a great Marine and a great Sergeant Major and a great Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps, and still gives back to the Marine Corps every day. I mean, he served on a number of Marine Corps organization boards. I think he's backed off of that with the years now. He still goes hunting, and he can still knock down pheasants. Still a good shot, and great Marine. So I ended up 3 years there at MCRD. It was a great time in the sun, and of course now I've been out of the Fleet Marine Force for 7 years.
Mm.
And the guy from headquarters calls and says, "Well, where do you want to go?" And I said, "I just want to go up the street to the 1st Marine Division." What's so hard about that? I've been out of the, where we make our 7 years in it.
Yeah.
Everybody said you get your time. He said, "I don't think so." He said, "I'll call you back." This is in October, the beginning of the year. You don't get your orders until
Yeah.
February, March. You move in May or June. So in February, March, I was fortunate enough to be selected. I think I must have been an alternate 3rd class to go to top level school, which is where they send baby lieutenant colonels to teach them about strategy and how to read.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, the Marine Corps didn't have a top level school. We have one today. We have the Marine Corps Warfighting College
Right.
for a few selected students. Then they didn't. Marines went to Army War College, Navy War College, Air War College down in Alabama, which is what all the pilots and everybody who wanted an easy ride always said. Send me to Air War College, man.
Yeah.
They got 4 golf courses, 4
Oh,
swimming
wow.
pools, and 2 clubs at that place. I got picked up. I was pretty junior, lieutenant colonel, because I spent a lot of frock time that doesn't count.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Newport. You get housing by seniority. I was actually the junior Marine and one of the junior officers in the class. And for 9 months, they gave you housing, and they put the Navy officers, the foreign officers, a big group of foreign officers, our allies, Navy officers, Marine officers, out on a peninsula that makes the eastern wing of the harbor at Newport.
Right.
It's actually government land. It's called Fort Story. And it's beautiful quarters. You got the Atlantic on one side, and you got the big bay there coming in Newport Harbor on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
and you got the old Revolutionary granite fort that's been rebuilt. And in the spring, the Newport Jazz Festival is held there, so you can put your picnic lunch on your front lawn. You don't have to pay. But I didn't make that, and you're there with your classmates.
Yeah.
And so 2 of us didn't make the cut. All the houses were full. They stamp your orders. You got to live in town. Turned out to be a beautiful thing. Myself and the other junior officer was Lieutenant Colonel Tom Jones, who is the short Jones, not the tall Jim Jones. Yeah. And so we lived in town. We rented a townhouse. My sponsor coming in was a great friend, Lieutenant Colonel Nick Pratt, and he had lived in town and told me to live in town because the commute from Fort Story, there's no ring road, there's no interstate.
Yeah.
You drive through downtown Newport, and the street you drive on is right next to the harbor. So it's a half hour of traffic unless you go in at 4 in the morning. But if you live in town, you avoid all that.
Yeah.
So being an alternate, I was there again on an athletic scholarship. Got selected dumbbell English. Nick Pratt told me the gym at where the War College is, and the War College is a separate base up harbor from the Newport Harbor. It's the next harbor up.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, west or inside the bridge to the island over at Jamestown. So he said, look, the one thing you got to do, you get a big check-in list. Got to go 1,000 places. Like every time. He says, you got to go to Gym 109. And so there's like 3 gyms on the island. It's a naval base. It's a big Quonset hut, not a little Quonset hut. A big one I used to do maintenance in. And there was a locker room in there, and he said, there are 50 full double wall lockers that you can rent for the year. And then all the rest are these little 6-inch wide and just half a foot high. And he said, the trick is to get one of them double wall lockers. You keep all your uniforms there. You can run to work. You can bicycle to work. He's a PT. He's a PT stud. I am a PT try harder guy. So the best tip he gave me, I got there and I got one of the double wall lockers, put all my uniforms in there. And of course, Naval War College, you go there and a lot of it's lectures. You sit there and you put a sharp pencil underneath your chin so you stay awake. And they have every 4-star general in the service fly up there to give you a lecture to the students. But what you realize is they're all coming up there because Newport has got great seafood, and they can get out of DC and they can fly up there, and the cost of them getting a good seafood dinner and a good night in Newport is giving a lecture to some hard chargers that are sitting down there in the master bedroom. So had a great year. The colonel, there's a full-time colonel in charge of the students, and there's a senior class and a junior class. The senior class is lieutenant colonels. There's 12 lieutenant colonels selected each year in the senior class, and like 20 majors in the junior class. You never see each other except at Marine Corps events. the colonel called us together the week before it started, and he was in his twilight years. It was a great place to go last 3 years before you retire. And he said, okay, the 12 of us, two things. You got to win the crab races, which comes the second weekend we're here, which means you got to practice. And you got to, all 12 of you got to finish in the top 10% of the academic year. And I'll be watching you. And oh, by the way, that's how I'll write your fitness report. It's an academic fitness report, but if you're in the top 10%, I'm going to write nice words. If you're not, top 10% make the honor roll, right?
Yeah.
So we said, holy shit. So after he leaves, we get together, the 12 of us. Crab races are when you lay down on your back and then you hunch up on the back of your arms and
Yeah.
your haunches and you put your head back so you're an upside down crab and you walk.
Oh,
Well,
geez.
it's in the officers club down by the marina.
Uh,
And, you know, there was an Air Force team, an Army team, a Marine team, and then the Navy students had a team from the submariners because they had, you know, they had 100 students, Navy guys, submariners, the air wing bubbas, and the surface bubbas, right?
yeah.
Well, you know, and then it's beer drinking and he ate hard-shelled crab, you know, it's Newport.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be the icebreaker. So, well, I guess we had to practice. So we had like 4 practice sessions where the 12 of us had to go there in the afternoon and drink beer and tell everybody we were practicing. I think we practiced once, maybe the day before,
Yeah.
and it's a relay race, right?
Okay.
So and I think I think you had to put 6 crabs in. So you know we did the relay the day before and figured out who the jocks were, picked our 6. You know, the senior guy didn't have to do it. The senior lieutenant colonel of the 12,
Right.
he got to go for the coin toss to pick lanes, and you know the other guys had to be cheerleaders. And
Yeah.
so we won the crab races. The monitors came as always in October, and they said, "You guys are the top cream of the crop in the Marine Corps. You're going to get to go just about wherever you want. Write down your 3 choices." So of course, I write down 1st Marine Division and
Yeah.
1st Marine Division, 1 MEF, and Marine Corps Base Camp Pendle. And everybody turns to him in. He comes back after lunch and looks at him and said, he hands back 2 of us. He handed back myself and another lieutenant colonel in the class, a great Marine named Kevin Kennedy, Lieutenant
Okay.
Colonel Kevin Kennedy. And he's folded. He hands it back to 2 of us. He says, I can take care of you 10 guys. You 10 guys will get your first choice. You 2 guys can't go to California. You know, everybody wants to go to California these days. Give me 3 more choices. So, you know, we both give him 3 more choices. And, you know, he goes away for 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and that year, the cost of living went through the overhead. The year prior and the year after. And all of a sudden, Camp Lejeune for career Marines that were married and had families with kids in grade school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
Camp Lejeune was a low cost of living. There was plenty of quarters. The schools were DOD schools.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, lots of good Marines, everybody wanted to go to Camp Lejeune.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the monitor calls up and said, looks like you 2 boys are going to the West Coast. Oh, we might want to go to Camp Lejeune. Nope. You 2 guys asked for the West Coast. You 2 boys are going to the West Coast. So he goes away, and about a month later, we're almost getting ready to graduate. And same old thing. The guy who sponsored me there at Newport was the guy I had actually sponsored to be a UNMO, UNMO,
Mm-hmm.
United Nations Military Observer. We were both captains. Nick Pratt, I sponsored him to be a UNMO. He sponsored me into Newport, which means he gives you all the gouge. Like go to gym 109, get a big locker.
Yeah.
He says, "Hey, I got a good deal for you. I can guarantee you 1st Marine Division. You can come in here and be the G2 for the general." I said, "Well, that's a colonel's billet. That's why it's a good deal." I said, "How can you guarantee I'm the G2?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, the general said I had to find my replacement, and I can't leave till I find my replacement. And you got all the cards. You got the clearance, and you got the
Yeah.
intel background, blah blah blah. You're going to be the G2." I said, "I don't want to be the G2. I've been out of the FMF now for 7 complete years.
Yeah.
No, 8 years. 8 years because I had command staff, Houston, San Diego. I got to go down to the infantry." And he goes, "Well, that's where I'm going. And so tough luck. You're going to be the G2." And so, yeah, so you get orders to the division. Back then, you got to set orders to the division
Yeah.
as a lieutenant colonel or a colonel. You just 1st Division. The general decides what you do. It's not exactly that way today, but then it was. The general was the king. He was the king of his division, the Blue Diamond, the 1st Marine Division. Major General John Monahan, just a great, great Marine. I come in there and he says, "You're going to be the G2." I said, "Okay, sir. What else are you going to say?"
Yeah.
He says, "You do this good for a year and I'll take care of you." And that's kind of like the language you want to hear. Bust your butt for a year and taking care of me. He's an infantry guy. He knows where I want to go. And so I said, "Okay." He said, "Okay, that's all the good news. You're here. You got to take care of me. Go to Honduras and straighten up the mess down there. When you're done with that, go to Colombia and straighten up the mess there." I
Oh,
said,
geez.
"Holy go!" I go downstairs to the 2 shop. We had the 2 Alpha was an LDO Marine, LDO limited LDO, another acronym, ladies.
Yeah.
Limited duty officer Marine named Pete Peterson. "Oh, Pete," I said, "what's going on?" And he said, "Well, the 2 shop's running fine. It's all the troops that belong to the 2 shop that are overseas that we seem to be having trouble with." And I said, "I guess that's why I'm going to Honduras." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, you want to tell me about it?" He said, "Nope." He said, and so the headquarters then in those days was in the old White Elephant, the white 2-story building. It's a landmark at Camp Pendleton, parade deck in front, backed up against one little bump in the rise.
Yeah.
And it had been the headquarters of the 1st Division since the division got back from Second World War. Nice flagpole out front, 2 saluting cannons painted navy gray. It's now sitting there mothballed, waiting to become a museum.
Right.
The Marine Corps can't spend regular Marine Corps money to make it a museum, so some people are out walking around town with a hat, passing a hat to collect money. So I think someday it'll end up a museum. The new headquarters has gone over to Margarita, Camp Margarita. What a great name! Give me a margarita. I'm headed to Camp Margarita. It sits on the bluff. It's an old camp that sits on the bluff overlooking the river that overlooks Marine Corps Air Station Camp Pendleton.
Right.
And it overlooks the old ranch house. And the old ranch house, it was the Santa Margarita Ranch. And the Marine Corps bought the ranch back in the day because they needed a West Coast training place. And the ranch is 19 miles south to north, only place on the California coast today where there's 19 unobstructed, pristine miles of pure California beach and California cliffs. And now half of them are roped off to the environmental protection lady saying you can't train on them. it's still 19 miles of pristine land, and then it goes 20 miles in, and so it's like a rectangle shoebox
Mm-hmm.
with the big Santa Margarita River running right down the middle, and 5 miles inland, one side of the river is the old ranch house that became the commanding general's house for the base. Then it became the senior Marine on the base lived there, and the Marine Corps put a lot of money into it forever. Today, uh, with the new housing, the Marine Corps got in the co-op housing, the civilian military partnership that built all the new housing. There's new general officer quarters built out at 3 or 4 of them out there at Camp Delmar, and there's some more still back in up top 17 area.
Yeah.
Anyway, the big general got to live in the house there. The new headquarters overlooks the river. So anyway, I'm back in the White House,
Mm-hmm.
and Pete says, "Go back to the skiff." I said, "Where's the skiff?" He said, "Just walk straight out of the GTO office, go out the exit. That's the back door of the White House. Walk across the alley, and there was an old ammo bunker there.
Yeah.
And you open the door to the ammo bunker, and on the left side was a skiff. No windows, easy to skiff up. And the right side was G2 storage and files." He said, he gave me the number, pull the file on, Honduras, and went in there and pulled the file. We had a counterintelligence team stationed in the capital of Honduras and another counterintelligence team stationed in El Salvador, and their logistics was out of Sotocano, Honduras, a big long airstrip, middle of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a hot war going on in El Salvador, civil war at the time. We had Marine advisors there, some great Marines, very few of them. Because of Vietnam, Congress had capped the advisors in country, the total number, I think, at 65, and, a lot of Green Beret guys and a lot of
Right.
guys. We had a couple Marines there. Counterintelligence is the intelligence we run against the enemy's intel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a highly trained organization, but they're gone a lot, and every once in a while they can get off the reservation. So my first job was to go down and look at the books, and you usually can't get people on stuff that's verbal, even though you know it's happening, and it's morals that happened, meaning poor morals that happened
Right.
last week, because it's he said, she said. But if you
Mm-hmm.
look at, that's a trend line. And if you got somebody that's a senior enlisted or a limited duty officer or a senior warrant officer off the reservation, if you look at his financial books, he'll be off the reservation there. It's kind of like, getting the mafia guys on tax evasion.
Right.
So
Yeah. Makes sense.
you clean them up, and you come back and you make a recommendation to the general. We got them dead right, sir. What do you want to do? And 90% of the time, the Marine Corps institution does not like to have a public trial and put its laundry in the streets, and we don't like to divulge. We're running cross-border operations into Nicaragua
Mm-hmm.
against the communists. We're running support operations into El Salvador. So usually it's, we can take them to a general court martial, and that has to be public except for the classified sections, which is 89% of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can just sort of call them in, and Sergeant Major and I can sit down with them and say, your choice. You're going to a general court martial. Here's the general's already signed it. Or you can sign this piece of paper and retire tomorrow and get your retired pay.
Yeah.
Or really, really bad, we'll take you to commanding general office hours on a plea deal. You plead guilty and we'll knock you down one pay grade. And so we cleaned up Honduras and got some new blood in, and that was counterintelligence. I hate to say it, off the reservation. Come back home and sit down and how's it going, Pete? And he said, it's going great, but I was up to see the chief of staff yesterday, and chief of staff asked me kindly when you were going to Colombia. And I said, Pete, I got home last night. He said, hey, I'm just passing what the chief said. Of course, the chief of staff is the senior colonel, usually by rank and lineal number in the division. But right. if not, he's still the senior colonel in the division, and he holds a place that's the colonel among colonels. Mm-hmm. In other words, when he speaks for the general.
Right.
And so I went up. Thanks, Pete. So I went up and told the aide I needed to have a cup of coffee with the chief to buzz me when the chief was open. And, a half hour later, I get a buzz. I was on the first deck. The general, of course, second deck, big suite, right, overlooking the flagpole. Him and the first division sergeant major got the bay view window, as they should, looking at the flagpole. I go in there and the chief, and I go, yeah, chief, I know I got to go. He says, okay. When you going? Well, I thought I'd go this week. Well, I didn't ask you that. I asked you when you were going. I said, Chief, I got home yesterday and I got a family. He said, just tell me the day you're going. I said, okay. I got to look at your calendar. I go in and walk down there and I looked at it and I said, well, I think I'll be going Friday or Saturday. He said, that's not an answer. Okay, I'll go Saturday. That'll do. Saturday, you're out of here. Well, which means you're not working Saturday. You gotta, you gotta go to the airport, and
yeah,
that's either drive to Los Angeles or drive to San Diego, get a
right
flight to in Colombia. We were teaching the Colombian Armed Forces riverine operations, and the government was fighting against the drug cartels that we know today. And so the government controlled the capital and a couple of the port cities. The cartels, and there was more than one of them, controlled the heartland of Colombia. And there were 2x2 10-foot wide roads that went into the heartland that 5 miles out of the city turned into dirt. But most everybody went by river, right? You went up.
Yeah.
And so the U.S. Marines were teaching riverine operations. I think we got stuck with it. I kind of thought it should be a Navy job. So I went down there and interviewed everybody that was on the Marine team. And, what they needed was support. It was, they just hadn't had it out of sight, out of mind. There's a few cables from the embassy back to D.C. They kind of got them on the skyline on little stuff. And so, I got my green notebook out and wrote down, we need more Marines. We need more Marines that speak fluent Spanish. Mm-hmm. So we need Marines that have been in a riverine craft, which means reconnaissance Marines. And what the reconnaissance community had been doing is they had been stonewalling sending Marines down there because they didn't want that mission. They wanted to do, missions they wanted. And so we got that all turned around. And of course, Master Sergeant Herman Diaz, who I had last seen as a sergeant in Delta Company 1st Recon, checks in to the 1st Division. We knew he was coming. He was trying to go to recon. Mm-hmm. We had his book flagged, and he checked in with personnel, and they sent him to the G2 shop. He checked in with the master guns we had. It was Intel master guns, and hey, look, I'm a recon guy. I'm not a recon guy, and the master gun said, "You just have a cup of coffee and relax. Uh, you're in G2 and get over it." He goes, "Well, why?" He said, "Because the G2 is a guy named Fallon, and he by named you. And oh, by the way, he's going to give you a mission." So, called him in and I said, "You want to go to Colombia?" He said, "No." I said, "Good. How much time do you need off with the family?" He said, 30 days. I said, "Good. You got 30 days. 31st day, you're going to Colombia and you're going to be NCOIC." So he went down there and he spent the better part of 2 years down there and did a wonderful job and
Wow.
came back and he figured out that he probably wasn't as competitive as the other recon Marines were to Master Gunnery Sergeant. And there were a lot of good job offers for Spanish speaking trainers that knew how to shoot rifles and run riverine boats. So with his eyes open, he made a good family decision and retired with, I want to say, 24 years. And,
Okay.
got out and picked up a contractor's job and, left the family in San Diego and had enough money to buy a better house than I had. And went on and had a successful next 25 years as a government contractor doing good things for our country.
Yeah.
He's now passed, rest in peace, about 2 years out there buried in San Diego. So I'm the G2. Those are the two highlights. I mean, the rest of the stuff, Pete Peterson and the Master Gunnery Sergeant ran the two shop. The bear, the bear meaning the worst thing was you had to keep track of all your top secret documents.
Right.
And then you also had to inspect every G2 shop or every S2 shop in the division. And then you had, I got one more good one. Oh, a really good one.
All right.
I just thought of it. Okay. I'm going to take a breath, take some of my caffeinated coffee here in my pint coffee mug. You got any questions about living in the G2 shop of the division?
No, not really. And now how long were you there at the doing that? Was it a year?
It was actually less than a year. I think it ended up
Oh, wow.
10 and a half months.
Okay.
I'll tell you that when we get to my going out story. So the Scamp platoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ladies, Scamp. Scamp. I'm going to have to think about it. Scamp. SAM. SCAMP. Okay, so it's Sensor Something Analysis Management Platoon. Maybe it's Sensors Control.
Okay.
So the Marine Corps got in Vietnam. McNamara liked sensors, and he spent a lot of money on sensors.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marine Corps got into sensors, some sensors on airplanes. These were ground sensors, and there were some hand-carried sensors that you could dig a hole and put them in the ground, and the top of them looked like a bush and had an antenna in them. And some of them listened, some of them were magnetic. And so there was a sensor platoon. That's the P in Scamp. And the sensor platoon of the division belonged to the Scampsters, not hamsters, the Scampsters.
Okay.
And so when I got there, after I'd been there about 3 weeks, I met the captain in charge, platoon commander, in charge of the Scamp platoon. And of course, they were under strength. And we had a couple cups of coffee. And I said, "Well, what's your biggest wish?" And he said, "Well, none of the sensors work. And they're all Vietnam era sensors. So we're now sitting in 25-year-old. So what do you guys do? Well, mainly we get fapped out to base and cut grass. The division really doesn't have a scamp capability. I said, well, we got to fix that. And what are we going to do? And I said, oh, we got to learn my old Second Force Recon trick as an NBC guy. You take all that scamp equipment and you classify it non-effective based on a field operational test where you and your gunny put it in the dirt and it didn't work. And then you sign that test and you send it up to me and I'll endorse it with an endorsement that says replace. And then you have to dispose of it. You take it to DERMO. Yeah, another acronym. DERMO. Defense Equipment Recycle Management Office. Read, it's the dump on every base that you can take your stuff and leave it there, but other units can come. And if other unit likes your stuff better, you can pick it up by signing for something at DERMO. So good gunnies go to DERMO once a week. Really good gunnies trade their stuff to each other before they get to DERMO.
Right.
Anyway, you take all the sensors to DERMO, get rid of them, then we'll put them all on order. And then we will buy new ones. Great plan. We do all that, takes 3 months. Put them all on order. The master guns and Pete Peterson, the major command, hey, you don't have money in your budget in the G2 shop to buy this equipment. So, okay, then we have to request MEF and the Marine Corps to buy it, put together a letter. I'm not going to buy direction this one. I'll write a personal note on it. We'll get the general to sign this one.
Yeah.
We need, because this is mission essential for the division. So we put all this rationale in this big letter, mission essential. Got to buy the latest and the greatest sensors to train the scamp platoon. So the division has the capability to guard one of its flanks with scamp equipment.
Yeah.
And so we go up there, we sign I signed the first endorsement. It's mine, letter signed to Headquarters Marine Corps, G2 budget, and via CG First Division, via CG 1 MEF.
Right.
Then it goes to headquarters, 2 vias. And we hardly ever ask the general to sign anything. I usually sign stuff by directions, send it wherever. So I carry it up, sit down, cup of coffee with the chief and say, Chief, the general has to sign this. No problem. Mike looks through it. You're good to go. The general signs it. He didn't read it. Chief told him to sign it. It goes up to MEF, which is MEF is in the cement building now that I think is base headquarters. Then 1 MEF was in the cement building on the same parade deck, but 90 degrees. They're at the 9 o'clock level up there. In those days, the 1st Division commander was double-hatted, meaning he had 2 hats. He was the division commander and he was the MEF commander.
Okay.
And so on many days, the general came to work at 5 o'clock in the morning and stayed there till noon at 1st Division, having a staff meeting on Mondays, whatever generals do.
Yeah.
Sometimes he'd PT, sometimes he wouldn't. But usually by 1300, he would take his car and drive over, park in his CG's slot for the CG of 1 MEF. He was the MEF commander. And so MEF, I'm saying MEF, MEF, Marine Expeditionary Force.
Right.
In 1987, when I'm telling this story, 1988, back up, 1989, the MEF commander was MAF, Marine Amphibious Force.
All right.
We do that to confuse the Chinese and our ladies, to make our ladies think we're talking new stuff.
Yeah.
So Marine Amphibious Force under General Gray became Marine Expeditionary Force.
Right.
So we have Marine Expeditionary Forces today. Then it was a MAF. And so we were one MAF, right? And somebody's going to watch this and tell me that it switched to one MAF. And it did right about, Gray was the commandant then. So it might have already switched over. And I didn't look up the switch before this podcast. So anyway, he's still double-hatted. He's actually the last double-hatted one MEF general. And so he goes over there, and I want to say about 3 weeks later, maybe a month, Peterson comes in and throws this big, thick folder in with lots of white paper on top into my inbox. And I said, Pete, you know I don't like paperwork. You take care of that paperwork. He goes, hey, sir, I'm sorry, but that's the scamp budget where you asked for $1.9 million to build out the scamp platoon. It's returned from one MAF, rejected.
Oh, no.
And it was rejected by the G2 of one MAF. It's a colonel and signed by direction. Well, I didn't take a liking to that. And so I took out a piece of paper and put a bunch of wrote a longhand note on it to the G2 who was a colonel, and told Pete to get the G2 runner to run that back to her inbox. And in my note, I said, it cannot come back to me under your signature. Please look who signed it. It was General Monahan.
Right.
It runs up there. My phone rings, and the G2 says to me, you don't want this fight. I said, it's not my fight. CG, the division, is asking for, this is a budget thing. This is easy. Send it to headquarters and add it to the budget. You don't get the big picture, Fallon. I said, yeah, I never have. Man, a month later, it comes back, and it's an endorsement, like the fourth endorsement on this thing now. Endorsement number 4, subject's the same. Then paragraph 1, one word, denied, period, signed, Major General John P. Monahan. So in the morning, he approved the budget. In the afternoon, he rejected it. I take it and say, this can't stand. And I take it upstairs to my chief, the big bull colonel, and give it to him. And he looks at it, and he said, don't even put it in my inbox. He said, I'm going to save you a lot of time. You take it back downstairs, and you resubmit it next year. You put a note on it, resubmit it next year. There'll be a new general. There'll be a new G2 colonel up there, and you'll probably be stuck in the same hole. And if you're this passionate about it, you put it in next year. Okay. So we're trucking along, and my predecessor, Nick Pratt, just all-star Marine, Royal Marine Commando School, UN military observer as a captain, U.S. Naval Academy graduate, company commander, all the good things. He, of course, is sent down to the 1st Marine Regiment, which is the regiment in California that's out of Camp Horno.
Right.
And that's the regiment that supplies the battalion landing team for the MUSOC program. MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, SOC, special operations capable then certified unit.
Mm-hmm.
Marine Corps' got 7 of these beautiful units that are commanded by colonels, Marine Expeditionary Units. Each of them has a Marine battalion landing team rifle, each with all the attachments, commanded by a hard charging infantry lieutenant colonel. Well, when Pratt left G2, he went down and became the executive officer, 1st Marine Regiment, which is the on-deck batter circle to learn the training pipeline and all the SOC training that's
Right.
going on them, and to watch, usually for a year, the 4. There's 4 battalions in the 1st Marine Regiment then. They had, lucky enough to have 1st Battalion, 9th Marines,
Mm.
besides 3-1, 2-1, and 1-1.
Right.
Well, his year's up, and it turned out it was 10 months because 1st Battalion, 9th Marines just got back from float, and when a battalion landing team comes home, it dies, and 2/3 of the Marines are on orders. They try to keep a cadre of 1/3 for the next pump,
Right.
so that on your next float, 1/3 of your Marines were been on just the previous float,
Mm-hmm.
2/3 new guys. But that team then goes through a full year training. You go through 6 months with the regiment,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like 6 months to build up. So you're not at full strength, but you're building up, and you do individual and small unit training. And then when you're 6 months out from becoming part of a Marine Expeditionary Unit,
Right.
at E180, that's embarkation minus 180 days, you chop, which means you leave ownership of the regiment, and ownership, you become the ownership of the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, the 13th or the 15th,
Right.
if you live at Camp Horno. So Nick Pratt is the XO. It's time for him to go get 1-9.
Mm-hmm.
And so the general, to his word, said, Monahan, you did a great job. You go down, you get to be the XO of 1st Marines. And then when 1-1, who was then out for 6 months deployed to Westpac,
Mm-hmm.
with a stellar Marine named Terry Murray as the BLT commander, you'll get 1-1.
Okay.
Life is good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to go down and relieve Nick again. Nick goes down to 1-9. And as the executive officer of the regiment, you do whatever the CO doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
But you start watching the training, and then you got a good idea you're going to 1-1. I mean, nothing's baked in gold. It's all verbal. But so you start really paying attention to their training schedule,
Mm-hmm.
and to what personnel are going to 1-1 when.
Yeah.
Because they're going to end up being your boys. The regimental commander was Jimmy McClung, a great Vietnam War fighter who believed in training. The guy before him was a guy named Gary Brown, who really put MUSOC training back together. When Gray basically at FMF Lanton as a 3-star and then the commandant,
Mm-hmm.
created the Marine Expeditionary Units, it took a while for the rest of the Marine Corps to get on board. And on the West Coast, it was Colonel Gary Brown as the CO of 1st Marines, took his mission as the training commander for the 4 battalions to get them ready.
Yeah.
Seriously, Jim McClung's message to the regiment was, go to the field. I mean, that's at the regimental level. He
Mm-hmm.
would take the regimental headquarters to the field on Monday, kind of like
Yeah.
what all the battalions do. He'd come home on Friday. I mean, he
Wow.
loved going to the field. And, the driver would drive his box out to him. He set up his tent in the field.
Hmm.
Guess who gets stuck at the regimental headquarters? Well, Tosh. And then I get these notes back. Don't send me this kind of shit with the thing I just sent to him. Figure it out and sign it by direction. Oh, basically anything that was not operational.
Right.
A great boss, a great way to learn, and we're now moving into June of '80. We're in '89. We've moved into the spring of '89.
Hmm.
No, I mean the summer and fall of '89.
Okay.
We coming around. We did the 10 months of '89. Was at First Marine Division. I go down in April of '90 down to the First Marine Regiment to become the XO.
Okay.
And for all the historians out there, August of '90, if I got it right, is a historically significant month because the guy named Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait.
Right.
So everybody in the Marine Corps went from peacetime to wartime in their Marine housing group,
Hmm.
and everybody at the 1st Marine Division, who was the division that was in the operation plan for CENTCOM
Hmm.
and 1MEF to go. Well, they got really, really serious, and things started to move fast. And so I don't think anything else significant happened to me as the regimental XO that are lessons learned to anybody listening to this. I mean, I got to go home at 1700 or leave Camp Horno. Then you got to Camp Horno. It's the hottest place in Camp Pendleton. Anybody's been there. It's a bowl. It's a bowl of heat inland. I was lucky enough to get I didn't get quarters. Bought a little cabin in Oceanside, California,
Okay.
8 blocks from the beach.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
it's a wooden, a little stucco over it. It's
Hmm.
a sweetheart. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. We're a small family, but it's a 45-minute drive home. But still get home when the sunlight's lit to see your family. And
Hmm.
so in August, holy moly, the Marine Corps is going to war. Well,
Right.
General Gray was the new commandant. He had already made the general officer announcements who was moving where
Hmm.
for most of the big guys pre-Saddam invasion.
Okay.
And I might have this wrong, but I think General Monahan was going to, John Bennett was going to pick up his 3rd star and come back and become manpower. Job for a
Okay.
3-star back in Washington. Well, when Saddam invades, he calls the commandant and says, "Stop the bus. I've been training this division for 2 solid years,
Hmm.
and let me take this division to war." And the commandant said, "General," I don't know what he said. I wasn't on the line. Words to the effect of, "General, thank you for your input. General Myatt is inbound," and the commandant had selected Brigadier General Mike Myatt who was one of General Gray's boys. He was on General Gray's team to come in to take the Blue Diamond. And so that change of command was set up. And it was going to happen. Monahan didn't fall off the turnip truck and didn't shoot Unk at the rifle range. He was an expert. The next day, he picks up the phone and calls his commandant and says, General Gray, we're going to war. Gray goes, yeah, John, I know. Well, I am your 1 MEF commander today. I should just stay here since I've been here for 2 years and take 1 MEF to war.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
John. Thank you for your input. I look forward to you checking in at Headquarters Marine Corps and helping me fight this war from the staff. Lieutenant General Walt Boomer is inbound to take the MEF.
Okay.
And so you got to know there was a disappointed warrior in General Monahan that missed his opportunity there.
Yeah.
Every Marine worth his salt wanted to go to war. We hadn't been to war since 1971. We left Vietnam, and this is 1990. So 20 years or so, 30 years. I don't know how to do math. I don't know how to do math. Some people count 75 because a slice of the Marine Corps did Operation Frequent Wind and Eagle Pull. Those were the evacuations. The NEO, another acronym, Non-Combatant Evacuation Operation. At the Marine Corps, the 911 force is a specialist in. It should be able to do today, but we could do them back then. And Frequent Wind and Eagle Pull in 1975 were the NEO operations out of Saigon and then Phnom Penh when we closed those 2 embassies. The general that ran it is sent on a float down that became it was a MAB at the time, MAB, Dick Carey, but his ground combat element was a colonel by the name of Al Gray. So now we fast forward and we're now in 1990. Saddam's invaded. There aren't a lot of the Vietnam guys around are now master sergeants, sergeant majors, lieutenant colonels, and LDOs.
Right.
Not a lot around. All the young hard chargers wanted to get to war. Everybody's trying to scratch their head, figure out how to get to war, and that's the environment in the Marine Corps. And we'll talk about the ramp to war here for the West Coast guys because I'm pretty familiar with it because I lived it. But before we do that, are there any questions about how you clean your inbox out and what goes in the outbox and what goes back to the adjutant when you're lieutenant colonel? The rule is move as much paperwork as you can from the second deck to the first deck of the building.
It makes sense. No, I 100% makes sense. There's a lot that goes into that aspect of paperwork that not everybody really thinks about,
Well, it's called delegation. And if you push it down, people learn how to do it. You do less work. And the hard ones will bubble up, even if you push it down a couple times. I learned delegation from John Ripley when Ripley was the XO of the 6th Marine Regiment, and I was the XO of 1-6. The paper flow box went from my CO to the regimental commander, the lieutenant colonel, the colonel, to Ripley's box as the XO with the note on it. They came back to my box saying, "We think you guys can fix that," which meant I fixed it at the major level. But pushing stuff downhill is actually good, and it also makes a product better. And it's kind of like a fine wine in its own time.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. So, any question about paperwork?
No. I think I'm tracking on it. Maybe I need to take some lessons on that here and start doing that. I don't have anybody to pass it down to nowadays, though. So.
Well, it's hard when you're master gunnery sergeant, don't have to do any work, just drink coffee, and your day is delegating stuff to other master sergeants to do.
Yeah.
I mean, the old man tells you get this done. Well, you're just the messenger.
Yeah.
Drink your coffee.
That's right.
Well, guess what? It's the same for old colonels. And I formed a little company because I had nothing better to do. So it's the name of the company is POG, P-O-G, not Pogue. POG, P-O-G. That's an acronym, ladies. It's POG, the company that my wife and I founded. And yes, it's a small business. Yes, it's a disabled veteran small business. Yes, it's a woman-owned disabled veterans small business because she owns 51%.
Oh,
and
nice.
For all you new small business people that want to do government contracting, there's only one better. That's called in the contracting talk, it's called a Super 8A. And a Super 8A is an Alaska Native, Hawaiian Native, small-owned business, and they get extra bonus points in contracting when their bids are evaluated. But the key one is in a small business set-aside for a Super 8A, their bids cannot be protested.
Wow.
So there are a lot of Alaska Native companies that actually made so much money they grew up and they had to give up their small business and become a middle business, and they all do that. But then they go back with the same board of Alaskan Eskimos and they form a new small business. It's all good. They're doing good things for our country. Boy, I really got off on a tangent there. POG, small business, form that. We were talking about you not working. When I formed the small business, we divided the workload, and my wife is a brilliant administrator. She's a registered nurse, so I called her the back office.
Okay.
And so everything in the back office and sales and marketing and BS, that's the front office. That's how we divide the workload.
Yeah.
But sometimes stuff from the back office comes back to the front office. Disappears. I say, okay, I'll take care of it because she's a wonderful, wonderful purpose. But when you're an old man colonel and you had a full staff doing everything, and when you're a lieutenant colonel and had a staff, I mean, I don't think any paperwork came back to me except stuff from the general. And when the back office stuff came back the first week, I had a sucking chest wound. I said, I got to get my act together. Anyway, that was a plug for POG Consulting. And we actually do command and control consulting for the Marine Corps with command and control systems. And we help you win your next contract. And yeah, we are those dirty contractors, but we speak Marine speak.
Mm.
Anyway, all right, so we're done being the XO. The change of command for the 1st Division was 20 July 88. That's when Monahan gave it up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 20 July 88 is when he got the colors, and he kept them till 7 August 1990, and he passed them to General Myatt, and that was in the morning. And on 7 August in the afternoon, he passed them to General Monahan.
Oh, wow.
General Monahan passed them to General Walt E. Boomer. Well, guess what? He didn't pass them to Boomer. He passed them to an acting, because Boomer was en route and didn't get to Camp Pendleton till 15 August.
Ah, okay.
So somebody, I should go back and look it up, some happy general was the MEF commander for 7 days until Boomer got there. And when Boomer got there on 15 August, by our next session, I'll try to look up when Boomer went to Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, the train had left the station.
Uh-huh.
Saddam invaded in August and went down and took Kuwait. Kuwait Army just took off their uniforms, and he took the whole country of Kuwait and then occupied it with 8 divisions
Mm-hmm.
and sent his intel people down there and stopped. And of course, the big fear was that when he hit the coast, he was going to do a 90-degree right turn and go down the coast 100 kilometers where there's the Saudi Arabia border, and then keep going the next 100 kilometers to the rich Saudi Arabia oil fields.
Right.
Now, the Kuwait oil fields were super rich already, but he stopped, and when he stopped, everybody took a deep breath, and the United States said to their friend, Saudi Arabia, we would like to be your ally and be closer to you. And for an Arab nation to let non-Muslim white-skinned army come to their country, they had to swallow and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what they were thinking about was American forces coming on their territory, the least of two evils, the other evil being Saddam Hussein coming and taking their oil field. So the invitation went out for the U.S. forces to come.
Mm-hmm.
And what started as a well-told story of Bush the elder building a great coalition for a lot of great political reasons, and for the U.S. forces, will never have the opportunity to do this again. Got 6 months to build up combat power in a pristine environment to do it. Saudi Arabia, not only build up combat power, but to train in the same environment that you're going to fight in.
Right.
I'm going to make 2 big level comments that need to be made. But then unless there are questions, I'm not going to stay up at that level. The two primary advisors for Bush on the military side was Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell,
Right.
and his good friend, the CENTCOM commander, 4-star Army general named Schwarzkopf.
Mm-hmm.
And those two professional soldiers had both had multiple Vietnam tours and had 30 years reflecting on the mistakes this country made
Mm-hmm.
in Vietnam, and had swore to themselves, and then together got a blood brother deal that they were not going to make the same mistakes in Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
Right.
And the first was for the military to demand from the political side of the House, who are the boss, a well-defined political objective
Mm-hmm.
that the military use of force was to accomplish.
Right.
And so Dick Cheney was the vice president, Secretary of State. President Bush sat back, Powell, Schwarzkopf, he let those guys fine tune it and define it. And it boiled down to my words: kick Iraq out of Kuwait,
Mm-hmm.
reinstall the emir back into power, and put it back to the way it was the day before Saddam invaded. In
Right.
other words, Kuwait, one day before Saddam invaded, same organization politically in charge, which the emir had been there a long time, his family,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how they ran the country. And not written, but understood, all the oil companies back in business, which were all international companies, but also well-heeled companies out of Houston, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, H.W. Bush was out of Houston, Texas, was an oil man.
Mm-hmm.
And so the political objective got defined, and the military knew what they were supposed to do. And so they started building up forces. And then there was a big meeting in November. So State Department's building a coalition. And to get in a coalition, you had to send 3 guys and a flag. And the way you build a coalition is 3 guys and a flag. And what do you guys do good? And whatever you do good, the coalition said, okay, you can do that. And
Okay.
so lots of countries have capabilities that are excellent. You got fuel pumps, okay? Bring your best fuel pump unit. You're in a coalition because we got to build this massive army. But in November, I call it, my words again, I call it a litmus test. They went back and presented the plan in November to the White House. Schwarzkopf flew from Saudi back to Tampa and Tampa up to the White House. They went in, they gave him the big picture plan. And Cheney, playing devil's advocate, says, what's the percentage of success?
Mm-hmm.
And I've read the book, but I can't remember. But I think the two generals said, 72 to 75%. Okay. HW asked one question: how do I make it 100%? And so these two guys said, well, we don't think you can ever make anything 100%, sir. But they had to give an answer. So they just said, double the force. An unheard of answer. So the president said, okay, double the force. Well, guess what? That meant, double the size to over 500,000,
Mm-hmm.
over 500 million U.S. forces.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got that number right. Which meant the Marine Corps, in the November plan, it was the 1st Marine Division, the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, and the 1st FSSG run by Boomer with the MEF.
Right.
In the new plan, it was the MEF stayed. We only need one MEF. Bring the 2nd Division. Bring the 2nd FSSG. And the wing guys said, we only need one wing to run this, but we'll bring out all the planes and all the pilots from the other 2 wings. So all the squadrons and groups, you guys all come. We only need one wing headquarters. And so from November down to 1st of January, then the second flow all happened.
Right.
So from 15 August on, 15 August to November, if you were a West Coast Marine, you were trying to figure out how to get into one of the units that were going.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a Marine anywhere else in the Marine Corps, you were trying to figure out how to get transferred to 29 Palms or Camp Pendleton.
Right.
So the first units out of town was 7th MEB. 7th MAB, 7th MEB. My peers are gonna cut me for not being able to say it right. 7th Marine Expeditionary Brigade. The general was John I. Hopkins.
Okay.
Big John. His ground element was the 7th Marines, and they flew over. And I got to tell you, they got out of town fast.
Yeah.
They were using the big airfields, Air Force airfields up in Riverside
Mm-hmm.
and Travis, and we talked about the Air Alert Battalion,
Mm-hmm.
the Western Pacific Air Alert Battalion on Okinawa. Was our good friend Tom Jones, was 1st Battalion 6 Marines. So in this evolution, while Tom Jones is the battalion commander of 1-6, he starts at Camp Lejeune, a main side with 1-6, and trains them and goes through the UDP, Unit Deployment Program, to Okinawa, and chops to the 3rd Marine Division.
Right.
And as the Air Alert Battalion on Okinawa, Saddam invades. Marine Corps says, got to get the Air Alert Battalion in. Boom. He goes to Saudi Arabia and chops to the 1st Marine Division.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll finish the 1-6 story in a future episode when I come back and get face to face again with my good friend Tom Jones. So 7th Marines, they're in.
Yeah.
They're in the game. 1-6 is in the game. There's a Marine Air Group in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Squadrons flying in. Logistics is in the game. So General Myatt decides he's got to go. And he says, I'm taking the headquarters, 1st Division's going. And before he left, he says, we flew the Desert Rats in. We need to bring the next regiment by amphibious shipping. And in those days, there was enough amphibious shipping
Mm-hmm.
to lift a couple of MABs, Marine Amphibious Brigades.
Mm-hmm.
And so they make the decision that 5th MAB is going to go out of the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a colonel that's up at 5th Marines. In those days, 5th Marines was in San Mateo,
Right.
named Colonel Randy the Gangster Gangle. And he says, I got to go to war. I'm the gangster.
Yeah.
Big Vietnam guy, crazy man. He builds a 30-page PowerPoint brief, takes it down to division on why it has to be 5th Marines, needs to be this amphibious regiment with 3 battalions.
Yeah.
In the O plan, the classified O plan,
Uh-huh.
when the division goes, the amphibious regiment is the 1st Marine Regiment, because their whole life they've been training battalions
Yeah.
to be BLTs to go afloat. Little logic there.
Mm-hmm.
So Myatt says, I don't have time for 30 slides. He calls the commanders and their XOs and his G3, his chief, and his plans officer down to the White Building, go into the conference room. Randy, you got 10 minutes to tell me what you want to tell me. He says, we should go be the amphibious regiment because the 1st Marines has got to stay back and not go to war, because when the war's over, the Marine Corps still has to put Marine Expeditionary units in the Pacific and the Atlantic. A lot of good
Right.
logic there.
Yeah.
So the training pipeline has to stay.
Hmm.
Well, I'm sitting there, I'm the XO, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm going, oh, man, that's not the right answer. We're in the war plan, and I want to talk, but this is a meeting where lieutenant colonels take notes.
Yeah.
It's the colonels that are having a talk with the general. So Randy says, I want to go and be 5th MAB GCE, Ground Combat Element.
Right.
The CO of the 1st Marine says, the general says, what do you think? CO of the 1st Marine says, I think the gangster's right. And I went, I suck a chest wound, and I said, I say nothing. And so the General Myatt hits the desk, tells the plans officer, change the plan, tells the gangster, you got 30 days to embark, get on ships, and I'll see you in 2 months. And
Wow.
come on. So their 5th Marines are going, all my peers in 5th Marines are calling me up. Nah, 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 nah. So one has just gotten back.
Uh-huh.
It's August now, and they have just returned, and they're out on 30 days leave. I'm looking for the date. I don't have it in front of me. Doesn't matter. I don't have it memorized either. Maybe it's on this sheet of paper. Not going to waste everybody's time. So I'm scheduled to go take 1-1.
Yeah.
And now I'm not going to war, but I'm a happy camper. So we do the change of command.
Yeah.
Terry Murray, the CO of 1-1, got he was a colonel. He was selected for colonel when he left. He put him on, and then coming back about Hawaii, his boss got selected for general, so he moved up. Everybody went up one. Had an interim CO. They get back. I get 1-1. I go down to my building in Camp Horno, and so at noon at PT, my PT partner is the CO 19, Nick Pratt, who's in the training cycle 6 months in front of me.
Right.
And we get to run and say, boy, we're not going to go to war. You know, and it's all we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That's total honesty. How are we going to get in the game?
Yeah.
Our three peers up at San Mateo are calling us up saying, we're going to war.
Right.
So they embark and they go to war. They get on the ships
Mm-hmm.
and 5th Meb goes. I'm going to fast forward. 5th Meb stayed afloat as a diversion. They didn't land by Hilo until G+1, never really got in a fight.
Oh,
So
wow.
they yelled and yelled to get in a fight, never got there. The president makes the double down decision in November.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at home watching on TV. I went to work the next morning at 4 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody there. So I walk over to 19. Guess who's there? Pratt's sitting in his office. Why are you here? Hey, they doubled down and we got another shot at going. They said,
Yeah.
we got to figure this one out. Well, when they doubled down, 2nd Marine Division's going.
Yeah.
All the battalions in the West Coast, they've all gone except 4 battalions. One of them is 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines,
Uh-huh.
which is already mewed up. And because it's a crisis, that separate mew already sailed around the Persian Gulf.
Right.
So 3-1's in the game. Now there's 3 of us back at Horno
Uh-huh.
crying in our beer.
Right.
Oh, man. And everybody is going to war. Okay, we still got time, right? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We're good.
The reason you go to some of the schools is to meet people that you can rely on later.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Jones was in my den, one of 13 Marines in the Amphibious Warfare School.
Mm-hmm.
So he's already in Saudi Arabia. He's already pushed up the coast road 50 some miles to a place the Marines nicknamed the Speed Bump. And they nicknamed them the Speed Bump because this one Marine battalion landing team was supposed to stop 8 divisions of Iraqi divisions coming south.
Right.
They were the first ones there, and they felt like those 8 divisions were going to roll over them like a speed bump. So in Marine humor, that position became known as the speed bump.
Right.
We get speed bump stories later on. So Nick Pratt and I run every day trying to figure out how to get in the game. All my Marines come back from vacation,
Mm-hmm.
leave. The Marine Corps puts in stop loss. What is stop loss? Ooh, stop loss is like the Mexican hat dance, and a lady takes the arm off the record, the music stops, everybody freezes.
Yeah.
That means unless you're going to independent duty, like recruiting duty,
Mm-hmm.
you freeze and stay in place.
Right.
So the MEU SOC battalions, they try to man it 100%
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones that are tip of the spear.
Right.
So 1st Battalion, 1st Marines is manned at 100%. Got a couple guys in the hospital, but manned at 100%. Stop loss means those 2/3 Marines, 1/3 of which have been on 2 deployments, 1/3 of which have been on 1, that are supposed to leave, they don't leave. They stay there.
Okay.
So you have a full trained, not only trained, but certified Marine Expeditionary Unit
Mm-hmm.
in all the special missions of special operations capable.
Right.
Certified, trained, full up round. My argument becomes, hey, we're the full up round. We can go to war tomorrow. You put us in. Of course, there's nobody to tell that to. 1st
Mm-hmm.
Division leadership, they're in Saudi Arabia. Can't call them.
Yeah.
I can't. So I'm making this argument to myself and then Nick Pratt that we should go, he should stay and train when the war's over because he's got enough time to train. And he got froze. He's still missing a third of his guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, come in. So that week, the personnel officer for 1-1, who's a warrant officer, comes in to see the XO, and in Camp Horno, the CO and the XO are on the second deck, and they're old barracks. You can open the hatch and look across the head, and you can see that. I can see him talking to the XO, and the XO's looking at me. And they said, "What's the issue?" The XO said, "Well, we should come talk to you." So he comes through the head. The warrant officer has to go out in the hallway, go around, and come around.
Yeah.
This is a small head. So sit down, guys. So he goes, "We got 150 privates and PFCs that are coming to 1-1 from SOI, another acronym, wow. School of the Infantry." So I say to the warrant officer, "Why is that a problem?" "Well, sir, that's going to put us 132%. We'll be 32% above table of organization people, and I got to report that on the unit diary." I said, "Okay." Well, that's a problem. I don't know what to do. And I said, "Okay, warrant officer, who's allowed to sign the unit diary?" "Well, I am." He thinks, "Well, the XO?" "Yeah." "Who else?" I said, "You can, sir." "Okay, good. Hey, from this day forward, if you don't sign the unit diary, either the XO or I will sign the unit diary. And you don't worry about the numbers. but tell the S4 there's 151 new Marines coming in, and he's got to go to Dermo and get bunk beds and racks because we got to stuff some barracks." So Horno only had barracks for 3 battalions. So every time the battalion came off float, it was a big Mexican hat dance. Right. One battalion had to get on ship. There's only 3 battalions. Anyway, the 4 comes down to the office with the XO. "Oh, we can't do this." And I said, "We're Marines, and we're going to do it." And, all those offices that people have made platoon offices and gunny's offices in the barracks, they're all gone. You and the XO take all those offices away, put all the sergeants and corporals in those offices on bunk beds, 4 corporals to an office, and then squad bays, and then we had rooms. And it's not a 2-man room anymore. It's a 3 or a 4-man room.
Right.
This is the Marine Corps. Figure it out. It's a great thing to have operationally because every squad and every fire team had 4 Marines. Every squad had 13 Marines.
Yeah.
Every machine gun team had 4 Marines. The sergeant major had a squad. That was his flying squad. 13 Marines that did what the sergeant major said.
Yeah.
The XO had a squad. The XO's flying squad. I had a security detail of 5 Marines.
Okay.
So we're going to play like we're at war, right?
Yeah.
So I had my driver and 4 security Marines, fire team, right? So we're going to train like we're going to go to war. And so we're full up with people. We're the largest infantry battalion in the Marine Corps. Not because of me.
Right.
And not because of stop loss necessarily, because all the Marine Corps went to stop loss. The Marine Corps, in a peacetime move, in a decision made by the pencil pushers, the headquarters Marine Corps, made a decision that said, we can save the Marine Corps money by cadreing the 4th Rifle Company in every infantry battalion. And when we go to war, we can just reactivate the 4th Rifle Company. Well, that's dumber than fucking dirt. But the guys with the green eye shades put together a 2-year plan, and people were cadreing the 4th Rifle Company according to a schedule put out by Headquarters Marine Corps.
Uh-huh.
The last battalion with the last company that was supposed to be cadreed was Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, simply because they went afloat 6 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the last in the mythical manpower pipe.
Right.
So at the going away meeting with General Myatt, the day he flies to Saudi, I don't think I'm going. He comes over and looks me in the eye and says, do you still have 4 rifle companies? I said, yes, sir. Whatever you do, do not cadre the 4th Rifle Company. Okay? Yes, sir. What are you going to say?
Yeah.
So I get back there and I forgot about it, actually. I just thought he was making small talk or something. Forgot I wasn't going. And I was like, sir, I'm not going, Bubba. I'm not going. But he had moved on. Wait a minute, sir. And my XO, a guy named Mike Einseidler, comes in about a week later and says, see this message from Headquarters Marine Corps dated like a year ago? Got everybody's initials on it. Doesn't have my initials. Yeah, I know. You weren't here then. We're supposed to fold the flag at Delta Company 45 days ago. Okay, but we're not doing that. So throw that message away. I never saw it. You never saw it. Okay. Rips it up, throws it away. Well, he comes over a week later, 3 days later, I don't remember. The regimental XO called me up, said I had to walk over to see him. He has to leave the second deck of this building, walk over one building, up to the second deck, who's a lieutenant colonel, a good guy, Hugh Irishman, Hugh O'Donnell. And he says to Einsider, hey, you got a cadre Delta Company. Einsider says, my CO said we're not doing that. Hugo says, here's the message. Einsider says, my CO says we're not doing that. I said, well, tell the CO he's got to do it. Back down the stairs over to me. Colonel O'Donnell says you got a cadre. Hey, Mike, tell Colonel O'Donnell I'm not cadreing it. So he calls him up, not cadreing it. Hugh tells him on the phone, got to cadre it. It's a direct order from the regimental commander. So it's not a direct order from Hugh O'Donnell on the phone to Mike Einstein on the phone yelling across the head to me. So then I went into avoid the colonel mode.
Yeah.
I put on my PT gear, went out to PT. The adjutant's looking for me, and the XO says, I think he went looking PT. I run over to Nick Pratt's office, and I'm hiding in Nick's office, and Nick says, you can't hide from the colonel forever. Why don't you just go by and see him? Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Go by and see him, and I go and I see Hugh, and Hugh says, you got to fold Delta Company. I said, hey, Hugh, General Myatt told me not to do that. Well, you got anything in writing? I said, no. Well, we got this message from Headquarters Marine Corps. Well, I don't have it. I'll get back to you. I said, okay. So I leave. He goes in and explains it to the colonel. Now I'm in the shower. Get your ass back over here. Back over there. Go in and see the colonel. We sit down with Hugo and the colonel and say, you got to fold Delta Company. Hey, sir, I'm not folding Delta Company. There's a message here saying you got to fold it. Well, why can't we just use this message called stop loss and say we got this stop loss message not to fold Delta Company? And they're both going like this. And they both had just come out of PP&O, plans, policies, and operations at headquarters Marine Corps. And, you know, at headquarters, you live by the, you know, the routing process and the buff colored copies of paper and the word. And there's a message. I said, can't we call back or send a message back and say, because of stop loss, we're just going to hang on to Delta for a little while? Can't we just look into it? So, yeah, we looked into it. Yeah, we can look into it. We put that away. Ultimately, I never cadreed Delta Company. Ultimately, headquarters Marine Corps never answered the mail. And ultimately, nobody else ever told me to cadre Delta Company.
Okay.
I mean, so we don't lose the train of thought. I'm going to finish this story, but we got to go back to, we're still not in the war.
Right.
So I'll give what is it? What does my wife always say? Don't surprise at the end of the movie. No surprise busters. No clues at the end. Anyway.
Okay.
This is a surprise buster. 1st Battalion, 1st Marines gets into war. When we get there, we land at night, and it took about 4 days for me to get sorted out. That's part of maybe the next story, the story after.
Yeah.
On the 4th day, I'm in the 1st Division Command Center. I'm talking to the G3.
Mm-hmm.
General Myatt walks up, slaps me on the back. Really glad you're here, Mike. Well, thanks, sir. Do you still have 4 rifle companies? Yes, sir. You told me to keep them. I still got 4 rifle companies. He says, good. He looks at me in the eye and he says, effective now, as in this minute, detach 1 rifle company and attach it to Headquarters Battalion, 1st Marine Division. And then he looked to the 3 and said, that rifle company will be security for Headquarters Battalion. And in Marine Corps doctrine and practice, Marines that man typewriters and computers man foxholes.
Right.
But if you are fighting a 24/7 war, read today's pace of warfare,
right,
which was computer driven, and the Gulf War arguably could be called the first, not only the first total 24/7 computer. The clerks of Headquarters Battalion just in Desert Shield were wore out because they're all pulling a 4-hour watch on the line. So
still having to do everything else as well.
Still having to come to work and do a 12 to 14-hour day. You know, not an 8-hour day. It was like you do a 12 to 14-hour day and you pull 4 hours sleep, 4 hours watch.
Right.
Myatt, knowing this and smart as a crack old man, remembered I had that 4th Rifle Company. Every other infantry battalion in Saudi Arabia has got 3.
Right.
He takes that rifle company away from me and assigns it to Headquarters Battalion. So I had to make a hard decision on with A, B, C, or D. Maybe we'll save that. We won't tell that story. It ended up being Charlie Company for a lot of the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And they went and became the security element for the Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And one platoon became the security element for the 1st Marine Division Jump CP.
Mm-hmm.
The 1st Marine Division Jump CP was all in LAVs, acronym for LAV. Land Assault, Light Armored Vehicle.
Yeah.
Thanks for bailing me out. Light Armored
I
Vehicle.
can get them every now and again.
Yeah. So Light Armored Vehicle Basic has scouts in the back, 6 or 8,
Mm-hmm.
but the Light Armored Vehicle Battalion wasn't manned enough.
Right.
And then there's called C2, Command and Control. So the Jump CP that General Myatt took his jump staff in,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be 2 C2s and 6 gun variants with the big gun on it, with scouts in the back. So the 1st platoon, led by 2nd Lieutenant Tom O'Connor of Charlie Company 1-1. Tom O'Connor, honor graduate from Princeton, honor graduate from the TBS. Request mass to me. I didn't join the Marine Corps to be on security with Headquarters Battalion in the rear. I want to fight. Got told by his battalion commander, son, be like a plant. Grow where you're planted.
Right.
And the grow where you're planted speech
Right.
is taught in leadership. And every drill instructor and every sergeant major know. So I'm telling O'Connor, grow where you're planted. The company commander, knowing that was his best platoon, put that platoon with the jump. The 2nd day of the war, the jump CP, thanks to some brilliant navigation by an unnamed officer that was not O'Connor, they get separated from everybody. And the next morning, they get counterattacked, and they're getting attacked by a battalion of Iraqis. Well, Tom O'Connor gets in a fight, grabs a bunch of AT-4s, takes a fire team, goes around to the side, knocks out 4 BMPs. Meanwhile, the LAV company commander gets in it. 2nd Lieutenant Tom O'Connor earned the Silver Star and saw main guns being shot at him, and he personally shooting AT-4s, at 300 meters.
Wow.
So that's a grow where you're planted. We jump forward to finish the Charlie Company story. I'm still hiding in Nick Pratt's office trying to figure out how to get to the war. So I can start another one, or we can, whatever you're the boss.
Yeah, let's call this one, and then we will come back and pick up there whenever we come back for the next one.
Well, I'll try to look up some of the right dates and acronyms so I can, at least on the next step, my peers will probably stop watching because I had the acronyms wrong. But we will start in August of 1990 with 1-1 at Camp Horno.
All right. Sounds good. Mike, thanks for doing this. This is definitely educational for me. I'm getting a kick out of it. So this is great. So, don't forget Hill 119. The book comes out in August. So we can't forget about that. But to all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA has some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. Mike cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies you served with. Ask them how they're doing. If they need that helping hand, please give it to them. Mike, one last time, thank you. I appreciate it. Until the next time. And then to all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks.